14th of January. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Frontier Opening Bell. I am Bosin Omofaya, and let's just get this through for the day, get you up to speed where we were on Tuesday. Of course, you may have heard the Nigerian market roared roughly 2 trillion in local currency yesterday, taking the all-share index to a total new high of roughly 88,000. The market was up by more than 3%, roughly 4%, led by the 3 largest cement makers, Dangote, Lafarge, Boa Cement. Then you've got folks within the banking space, including Zenith Bank, adding to Tuesday's rally on the Nigerian market, the strongest that we saw on Frontier Africa. You also saw a very strong rally on the Zimbabwean stock exchange on Tuesday. Delta, one of the big companies listed on the market in Zimbabwe, was very strong. Then you saw major gains by the modified consumer index, the materials, as well as the agriculture index there in the Zimbabwe stock market. That market was up around 2%. South African market down by 0.91%. The resources, financials, and industrial indices were down. The rand was also down on the dollar, as we saw the dollar index gaining roughly about 1% over the last session, and against the its peers, and Treasury, US 10-year Treasury solidly in the 4% region. So let's look at the BRVM, better by 0.30%. Tuesday, the Egyptian stock market better by 2.62%. Another strong performance from the market in Cairo. The Nairobi market bucked the trend since we started Monday by 0.29%, and that's a profit taking. Let me take it all the way to the big news across some of the big stories in East Africa. Yes, the Tanzania and Ugandan authorities have resolved the face-off, tit for tat, that happened a few days earlier. They said they will spend 3 days to resolve it. That was done in 2 days. That was good news for everyone. Now, the reciprocity will continue. The Kenyan authorities will allow Tanzania's cargo flights to land and vice versa for Kenya Airways passenger flights in Tanzania. All that has been resolved, and that's in the spirit of brotherhood. East African community moving off. Kenya shillings, however, down to a new low of about 160 to the US dollar. And the East African cooperative partners are racing to close $3 billion deal with the Chinese lender in order to allow projects to move on very quickly. And the Bank of Uganda says it's looking at 6% economic growth forecast in its full year 2023-24 period against 5.2% for the previous period of 2022 to 2023. Let's take you to western part of the continent, and let's see. Shell Nigeria, of course, yesterday announced that it's selling its onshore Nigerian unit for about 2.25 billion US dollars. That's one news that's hitting the Nigeria's oil and gas sector. We've seen a number of international oil giants exiting Nigeria's onshore due to oil theft, vandalism, the overall environmental degradation, and moving offshore, completely doing a whole lot of business off the shores of Nigeria. Shell Petroleum just added its name to the list, where you have ADAX, we have ExxonMobil, and a few more others. In the meantime, Allianz released a new risk barometer report on the back of the World Economic Forum currently going on in Davos, Switzerland, says that the risks that keep Nigerian businesses up at night are around regulatory issues, the country's cyber security issues, as well as economic risks. Those are, you can read more on that in the latest Allianz Risk Barometer report. And the federal government just announced the regulatory authority in the power sector says 15 new power generation and distribution licenses have been issued last December, reporting on that exercise and looking to see additional close to 600 megawatts brought on the grid for Nigeria's troubled power sector. And Cote D'Ivoire is set to raise the flag after 2 years hiatus by Frontier African economies in the global international debt market. President Alassane Ouattara says his country will go into the Eurobond market in the next 2 weeks. We expect that to happen by the end of this month or as early as the first week in February. There was no announcement as to what the size of the Eurobond will be, but we're expecting something between 1 and 2 billion US dollars for this cocoa-rich and resource-rich West African economy. We'll see what happens to the rest across the rest of the continent if they tap the international debt market in the current year, keeping eye on inflation and interest rates in developed economies, in particular in Europe and the United States. Let's take it on to Togo, where the Togocom says it's getting about $60.2 million IFC loan to support its connectivity operations in the small West African economy just next door to Nigeria. And Cote D'Ivoire is leading sub-Saharan Africa to issue that Eurobond. And that's the story. We're taking it all up again. It's good news that we're following very closely. So let's check in with the Southern African community. The President Ramaphosa's government is walking a very tightrope right now as far as the economy is concerned, and its budgets and then interest rates. South Africa's central bank, or the SCRB, is expected to cut rates sometime in July. That's according to some forecasts. Ngurungwana was speaking to Bloomberg at the World Economic Forum that there's no reason right now to raise rates that will hurt the economy and citizens in South Africa. But again, the budget for next month, which will be presented, will be a very tough one. So a very delicate balancing act there for Ngurungwana, as well as the Reserve Bank Governor, Leseja Kiganyango, and Mr. President. All of this ahead of South Africa's general elections in April. The MSME funding gap is threatening about 40% of South Africa's GDP. That's no good news for Africa's most advanced economy. And the FDB says Malawi's business climate is hostile to small businesses. That's no good news. But let's see what can be done by the authorities down there. And Zimbabwe's risk return in US dollar crunch as inflows decline. That's according to Imara Asset Management, because we've seen very strong FX scarcity in US dollar terms, that is not in Zimbabwean dollars, hurting this resource-rich Southern African economy. So let's finish up in North Africa. And we're just making the headlines. This Wednesday, Egypt's economy is shrinking to 2.65% in the first quarter of the current 2023-24 period, while the country is looking at about $250 million loan to finance its commodity imports. Some banks in Egypt are already cutting back on FX a takeout from by foreign authorities and foreigners who want to do business in dollar terms. There's some restrictions there as to how much dollars you can get, US dollar you can get out of Egypt. Some banks are already cutting back on that. That's FX liquidity crunch in Egypt. And of course, African commodity exchanges says they met with the leadership of the African Export-Import Bank on Monday. The headquarters is in Cairo. The whole idea was to see how much support African Bank can give to the commodity exchanges on the African continent. The Central Bank of Sudan is looking to triple its FX auctions next week. Let's see what the details of that are. And finally, Libya is planning an oil licensing round for local and foreign tenders in the very near future. The country is looking to improve on its oil production to about 2 million barrels per day. And those are your headlines at the moment. This is your Frontier Opening Bell. It's Wednesday, the 17th of January 2024. Have a great day, everyone, and see you soon.